Hello, boys and girls. This is activity 23-1. These are the notes for your notebook. Please feel free to write them down, and if you don't get all the notes in this setting, go ahead and rewind the video so that you can catch up. This video will be available at home for you to view again as many times as you need to get all the notes. This is a really important lesson. The quadrilaterals that we're going to be talking about today, there are several vocabulary terms. It's important to understand what they mean. So quadrilateral describes the number and sides of a four-sided closed figure. So quadrilaterals with no special name have no parallel lines. So a quadrilateral could be anything that's like this or like this. It doesn't matter as long as it's got four sides, a closed figure, and there are no parallel lines, then it counts as a quadrilateral. Now a trapezoid has one set of parallel lines, and so it might be where you have this kind of a shape. So this one up on the top and this one here, these are the parallel lines, and there's only one set of parallel lines. These other ones are not parallel. That's considered a trapezoid. A trapezoid might also look like this. So you have a straight 90-degree angle on one side. You have two parallel lines. These two are not. So that's a trapezoid. A parallelogram will have a couple of different things. It will have two sets of parallel lines. So it can be a square because it has two sets, or it could be a rectangle, or it might be a rhombus. Now rhombus has these slanted lines, kind of like a diamond shape. That's a rhombus. Rhombuses have what's called congruent sides. That's a really important term for you to know. Okay, if you didn't get those notes so far, don't worry. Go ahead and skip down on your page a little bit, or just wait and catch up with the rest of the notes at home. I want to explain congruent with a little bit more detail. Congruent is when the side lengths and the widths are the same. In other words, they have the same size and measure. So I've drawn a rhombus here, and it is a rhombus because it has two sets of parallel sides. You have this side parallel to this side, and this side is parallel to this side, and they're marked as such. The two blue lines, these are the parallel lines, and the two green lines mark these two parallel lines. The angles of them, the opposite angles, are also congruent, meaning the measure of this angle y is the same measure as this angle y. And this angle x is the same measure as this angle x. Now you don't have to worry about the color coding if you want to go back later and add that color coding to it. I mostly just used it because I wanted to make sure you clearly saw the angles and the lines that are congruent. So here are the yellow and the orange. They're congruent because they have the same angle measure. That symbol is angle, not an L, and not a less than. That's angle, same angle measure. And green and blue are congruent because they have the same side length. So it can have the same measure or the same side length. The next thing I want to talk about is consecutive angles. Consecutive angles are any pair of consecutive angles. They equal 180 degrees. So consecutive angles are side by side. These angles here, X and Y, they are consecutive angles because they're next to each other. These angles here, A and B, are consecutive because they're next to each other. And if you were to take the degrees of each of those angles and add them together, they would be 180 degrees. So X plus Y would be 180 degrees because they are next to each other, but also if it was top to bottom and A is consecutive with B, they are next to each other. A plus B equals 180 degrees because they are next to each other. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to catch up. I'm going to move on. The last thing I want to talk about is just to reiterate congruent angles. So congruent angles are a pair of angles. They are a pair of angles side by side or next to each other where the sum of the consecutive angles is 180. So how this might look like if you had two intersecting lines coming through, you would have angles that are created. So you can see this one, the angle AD is put together by a blue line that's touching. A plus D is 180 degrees. These are consecutive. A and B are going to be 180 degrees, and so forth and so on. B to C is 180 and C to D is 180. So A plus B is 180, B plus C is 180 degrees, C plus D is 180 degrees, and D plus A is 180 degrees. Which means if you take the sum of angle A plus the sum of angle B, C, and D, you would have 360 degrees. These are our notes for today. Please make sure that if you missed any part of this that you go back at home and finish copying down your notes, and you can proceed with working on the lesson today with your substitute. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you when I get back.